Hello and welcome to Dojo Live this Thursday, June 20th, 2024. I will be your host today, Kim Lantis, and joining me as co-host is America Guerrero.
Hello, Kim. Hello, Greg. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. Today's guest is Gregg Hopkins, founder and president of Get Hoppy Consulting. Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Kim. Thanks for having me.
No, the pleasure is ours because it's going to be a really fun conversation. We're going to be talking about revolutionizing the guest journey. Greg, you have a very, philosophical, maybe it's not, we'll see about that, question for us. And we're asking if we're merely replatforming the existing processes and data, or if we're embarking on a truly new guest transformation journey where we are challenging the status quo. But before we dive into that conversation, Greg, we'd love to get to present you to the audience a bit better. If you could please share your story, your experience, your passion for hospitality, and how that led up to Get Hoppy Consulting. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I've been in this sector for just about all of my adult life. I mean, I started in the hotel business and was one of my ownership was one of the first properties in the world to implement computers behind the front desk. And I kind of
the computers that were just one color, right? Where they got to choose the aqua blue, the greenish, or the yellow.
They're green. Well, it's kind of funny because they were green screens, but because it made the guest service agents look a little Martianish with the green reflection, they came out, we had to put filters on them, or we had to use the amber screens so that we got a truer reflection. That's how we revolutionized technology back then. And I just kind of took a liking to it. And one of the vendors that was working with us thought they would wanted to hire me so I could share how to use that everywhere. So I did that. And for most of my career, I was in the sales and marketing part of the industry. Working with various companies in various capacities, and really a nice successful career. And then in the mid 2000s, I decided to get back into the hospitality business and worked as the CTO for a boutique hotel group based out of California. And there, one of my old customers came up with an idea to build a CRM, which was called Libra On Demand. And so we partnered and had great success with that. And then Newmarket, which is now owned by Amadeus, bought us. And that product is now Delphi. That's on the marketplace. And I think everyone's heard of Delphi before. So me and my partner and our company, we created the next generation of Delphi. And then I stayed with Amadeus up until 2016 and ended up running their I was in charge of global marketing for Amadeus Hospitality. But I wanted to kind of go back to my entrepreneurial days and fell into the consultant role, which I've been doing since then. And I've been working with either hoteliers or hospitality companies, like in restaurant and clubs, that need help with technology, since I had such a good understanding of how it worked. And I still work with some vendors and helping them with strategies on how to go to market or how to be more effective in their place. And I just kind of fell into that and have been doing that since 2016. And absolutely, I love what I do. So I never have to work a day in my life. So that's the best part of it.
I love that. That is absolute gold. So we mentioned a lot about technology. And given who Dojo Live is as well, it's probably no surprise that part of this transformation of the guest journey involves tech. So I guess my first question is, as we're challenging the status quo, what is the status quo? What's currently happening or has been happening, and what's shifting? What's the future that you see?
Well, what I've seen and why I started to publish the series of articles, which is what brought us here today, right, was just to help hoteliers and those understand how much technology is involved in the guest journey. And you really become surprised when you realize how many systems it takes to run a hotel or to connect with the guest. And
do you have a number for us?
Oh, there's hotels with over 50 systems that
Wow.
they have inside of their hotels that they're using for different pieces, because there's not a lot of real enterprise solutions or ERP type of solutions where one vendor does everything. So much of it, very much of it is best of breed. So they pick a specific solution in order to do a specific thing, and then they count on all this integration to happen, which has gotten better because of APIs and modern technologies where that information is coming better together. But in the past, that was really the hard part of it. It was very expensive because for example, a PMS may have 20 to 30 integrations tied to it. Okay. So you're paying for 20 to 30 of those on both sides. You're paying the PMS vendor and the other vendor in order to connect to there. And if that vendor is connecting to something else, then you get this framework where there's a lot of integrations are going on, and they're even if they're at $2,500 to $20,000 per, that's a big piece of what you're doing inside of that. So I got looking at that and I said, well, first of all, let's kind of identify what's in the guest journey. And we go through the 7 steps that I've identified as being, the inspiration to the purchasing experience, to the pre-arrival experience, to the arrival experience, to the stay experience, which is where most of the tech lives, by the way, in the stay experience, to that departure experience, and then the reflection, or where you're doing guest reputation and feedback and all that information that goes there. So I said, let's look at all the pieces that go inside of there. And what happens is that I think technology is getting ahead of some of the areas where we are in the journey, and they're just replacing components. So they're not improving what's going on. They're just updating what's going on. So when you one of the things I look at and I ask myself, it says, with all of these things, for example, with the digital check-in or the contactless check-in, and with mobile key, and with wayfinding, and with being able to pick your own room, why do we still have front desk? Do you still need that front desk experience? Do you still need to stand in line to have somebody have a 3-minute conversation with you for you to give them the credit card and for you to get your key and to be able to select your room?
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Because when you do a short-term rental, you're not engaging with anyone face-to-face.
Absolutely, you're not. Except you just got to get the key code right. You just got to, or stop by the property management office and pick up the key. So there's not that involved at all. So short-term rentals have solved that, and they don't even know half these people. Where the hoteliers, they have loyal guests that are there, where they have a good idea who they are. So it's a safer environment for them, and it's something that you could just ask yourself: why can't I just, when I pull up to the hotel, why can't the guy who takes my car and takes my luggage, why can't I just get checked in there? Why do I have to go stand in line? So those are questions we ask ourselves along the way: is, can technology improve the process? Does it help with labor? Absolutely, because technology can replace some of those pieces. And there's other things you're looking for with, why are there manual processes that are in the guest journey, either because of poor integration that went on in the past, or technology has found a better way of doing things. Our industry, I don't think, I'll say for the most part, because there are some vendors that are good at this, are not very inspirational at changing the way those things are. What they spend more of their time is meeting what they think hoteliers want. So I always use the example, when Apple came out with the iPhone, they didn't have people saying, hey, it'd be great if I had one device that could be my phone and see my email. You could have a camera and could play my music and could do all these things for me. No, Apple just created that and people fell in love with it. So when was the last time a hospitality technology company ever came out with something that changed the way that people are doing things? It's been a while, and I love seeing those when they come out, and that's what I always get excited about, is I see those companies that are disruptive or in the industry going, oh wow, that's a better way of doing things. Why aren't we doing that better? You look at, like, in the restaurant business, how many times they're, in the US at least, they still take the credit card from the guest and they go into the secret room to process it, right? Well, what are you doing with my credit card there? Why am I just paying at the table? Some hotels do that, but I would venture to say a vast majority don't, where they're not doing things at the table. So you just need that adoption. I mean, thank goodness in a way that COVID came around and the contactless, or we would probably be in the same place we were 5 years ago with no one using mobile key and no one using mobile check-in because of the hotel didn't think their guests wanted it. But all the surveys always come back and tell you, Kim, in America, that the guest wants that. They want the contactless relationship. They want to be able to do, be able to have the power in their hand and use their phone as a service. Aspect.
So instead of thinking of what hotels want, we should focus on what the customer demands, right? In terms of technology. And I'm thinking, as you said, mobile, self-service, two-way messaging. But what is that the customers demand, like the users, so they can improve their journey experience?
Yeah, you look at. I mean, there's an overwhelming number of guests that want to use mobile check-in. There's an overwhelming of those guests. It's even a higher number that want to use mobile key in order to check into their room. And more hotels are getting there, but they're not there. They're still not there yet. They haven't worked out because they still have the front desk. And I will admit, it's easier to check into a hotel at the front desk if there's no line than going through all the process of doing it on the pieces. But look at how the banks had a problem with too many people in the lobby. So they put in ATMs and they took people away from behind the counter, right? They forced you to use the ATM. Look at airports. I mean, you can either stand in line or you can go to a kiosk where there's a line, or you don't have to do any of that. You can go right to your gate now, right? So it's easier to go through that process. They didn't take any of those things away from the customer. They just made it harder for them to use the manual pieces that were involved. So they had the ability to go that. So when you're looking,
I think it comes down to choice, doesn't it? In a way, like I appreciate that choice. Like I imagine, for example, the hotel experience, not maybe time goes faster than one thinks, but about a year ago or so, I had the experience where I was arriving to a hotel quite late in the night, 11, 12 p.m. Well, 11 p.m., 12 a.m. ish. And at that point, it's like the bank teller glass interaction with the front desk makes me feel uncomfortable as a woman standing out in the dark. Like, I'm not liking this. It would have been so much better for me to just check in and go to my room and be like, whew, instead of having this awkward interaction for 5, 10, 15 minutes and feeling kind of scared about it. But if I arrive at 12 p.m., in the middle of the day, I might appreciate that. I have questions. I want to take my time and things. So I think choice is what's
choice is key. I'm not saying you get rid of the front desk, because I think you'll still need that in the hotel. I just don't think it has to be the size that it is. I don't think it has the staff behind it that you have now. There'll be hoteliers that'll argue with you and say, oh, but we want to be able to give them that hospitality. We want to have a person and welcome them to the hotel. We want to have someone tell them what time breakfast is the next day, and to give them all the things. Well, can't your app tell them all that information? Can't that information be there? And then you can spend more time on servicing the guests that have those specific questions, as opposed to forcing me to go through a process. I mean, when I go back to
making sure that the breakfast is worth attending in the first place. Focus the other service areas. Yeah.
Here's the thing. If I go to your hotel a couple of times a month as a businessman, did it change? That's what time you had breakfast last time I was here. And I know where the elevators are, and I know how happy you are to see me. It always used to drive me nuts when I go on projects and I'd be at the same hotel for a couple of times a month over the period, and the front desk person would say, have you stayed with us before? Well, I was here last week. You checked me in. I mean, so give me the ability where conversely, I had a client in Nashville that I go to a couple of times a month. I stayed at a Hilton hotel, and I don't even know if I know where the front desk is, because the entire experience was I checked in on my phone, I picked my room, I had my mobile key, I checked out on my phone. I mean, I'm not really other than the fact that if I wanted to get my free water as being an honors member, I don't really know if I knew where that front. And they finally figured out that if they knew where I was getting water delivered, because they knew when I arrived, because they knew when I checked in. So there's pieces that kind of get involved with, there you go. And that's a better experience that I'm looking for. But to your point, I would never take that away completely out of the hotel. I would still have it available to you, but I don't need. So think about it. If I have 4 people behind my front desk today, and I only need 1 or 2, you've cut my labor requirements in half, right? So, and with everyone trying so hard to find that labor that goes on today, I fixed that there. So, and I'm not saying let's get rid of people, because that used to be you're just trying to lower the labor pool. Well, let's give them more time to do the things you want them to do so they can service the guests better. So you can drive that loyalty, so you can drive the uniqueness of your hotel so they come back and you don't have to go out and court them again.
And have a better employee experience, right? As someone managing the front desk, if I have that bit of a downtime or the ability to do the enjoyable parts of my job and interacting with individuals, right, I'm going to like my job more. I'm going to stick around more. I'm going to get better at it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's talk. We've talked about this guest journey. We've talked about technology's involvement, how we need that technology piece, not to replace, but to enhance the people within our organizations. How do we know which area of this journey to attack first? Or is there a process that you utilize in order to identify weak points, strong points? What should hoteliers be paying attention to?
Usually the first approach I take is to see if there's any sort of CRM built in the tech stack, because as long as I've been doing this, when I started, the PMS was the heart of the technology stack. Well, it's changed. It's moved off center, whereas CRM became more affordable and more it had more features in there. It's important that everything that has a guest profile in your tech stack all goes back to a centralized CRM. So you have a single guest profile, and then you can make decisions and manage and communicate with those guests via the CRM, as opposed to the other systems that are out there. So usually we try to make sure I want to make sure that that's an underlying piece in all points of the guest journey. They're using that central profile as the centralized point of information that they're deriving information off that. From there, your first focus is going to be on the things that are guest facing, because that's where you're looking to improve the experience. But you got to make sure when you're doing that there's integration and connectivity between those disparate systems that are working in the stack, and they're sharing information and in real time and talking to each other, so that it's not a delayed response. Then once you get the guest facing things worked out, then you can start looking at some of the back of the house things that go in there. Unfortunately, most of them fall really close to each other, because the back of the house things are what's driving the front of the house things. The back of the house things are what's servicing what's going in the front of the house. So those are the things you got to work in stride. So, and anything that can help drive more revenue or drive a better margin in the hotel, or is good technology to focus on, instead of the ones that there's not really an ROI. They're just kind of cool to have or nice to have, or makes it different. So you want to make sure you have a good, strong foundation to what you're building, and you just keep building onto that, keeping in mind what's your end goals. And each hotel is going to have and making sure the technology is aligned to who your ideal customer is, and what your property is attracting in there. If you have you could look at anything from age groups to whether they're male or female, or whether they're domestic or an international traveler. There's a lot of considerations you're doing in there, because sometimes if you spend a lot of money on making sure you have really good currency exchange, and you don't sell anything but US dollars, you don't have any international, why do you waste your time doing that? Along the way. So you just that's what you go through. The first thing we always do is I always go and I look at their stack. I look at what there's encumbrances in the operations that they have today. I look at how modern the solution is, what they're paying for it, making sure it's a fair market value. And then from there, we look to make either improvements to existing systems, or we recommend systems they don't have to be able to use on top of that.
Very smart. I know with this technology piece, we're talking about solutions, we're talking about systems. You mentioned the data piece. We touched on the process as well. In terms of cost, the economics of all of this, is this something that's frightening for hoteliers, something that they should take into consideration? Is it a definite return on investment approach, or how do you advise in that sense?
Well, look a couple of ways. One, I try to understand initially what their spend is, and I compare that to what their revenues are, so we can benchmark the percent of expense against the revenues that the hotel is receiving. I mean, typically, most of the surveys I've seen, they'll run between 3 to 7% of your tech spend is against revenue. So you see if they're aligned within there, or to justify what's in there. I have found properties, Kim, where they got rid of a system 10 years ago and they're still paying for it because no one told accounting to stop paying for it. So you'll find some things in there, or they're paying way too much for what other systems are doing today, or they'll have legacy pieces in their stack that they don't use. They'll have two systems that can do the same thing. That somebody bought this. I actually working with a global brand on a marketing project, a MarTech, and found out they had 5 CRMs in their tech stack because they were buying them to do very specific things. Well, we need a better email marketing system, so they bought this, and we need someone that can do this, and they had all these different systems in there. And you go, guys, you need one. I mean, you need one that can do all these things. You don't need 5 that can do a part of everything that was there. So that's, the cost can be is what usually scares people off, because one, if it's not any different. If you had a car, for example, okay, and your car still ran fine, why would you ever go to a new car? I mean, it does its job, right? But if you wanted things like, well, maybe it's too expensive to keep up now, or hey, I want to have Sirius radio, a Sirius radio in my car, or I want to be able to have all these new gizmos and gadgets that are in there, so they keep making things better. You got to give someone a reason to switch. But if you look at a PMS and you're not doing anything more than checking people in, checking people out, doing guest folios and doing rates and availability and the reservations, you're not doing anything special. You're not using any AI components to make it better, or you're not doing any better way to communicate with the guest, or you're not doing mobile check-in, or you're not doing any of these other pieces. Why change? I mean, you have no reason to move off of that technology. A lot of my customers that I work with, we actually, they're surprised that sometimes they pay less than what they're paying now for a modern stack versus their legacy stack.
Wow.
Yeah. We talk about data, processes, cost, but I'm curious about, based on your experience, in addition to this, is cybersecurity a component that also
huge
scares hoteliers in terms of digital innovation? I mean, to not have that physical control of giving the keys, for example, and depending on mobile apps, is that something scary for them as well?
It's huge.
A deterrent. Yeah,
it's huge. It's not big to the hoteliers. It's big to technology people, right? The technology officers or the security officers that are in the organization. Everyone I talk to, if I ask them what's the number one thing they look for in automation today, it has to be secure. It has to be safe. It has to be, because you can't afford to get hacked. You can't afford to lose customer data, because you're going to lose the customers because they're not going to trust working with you anymore. Plus the liabilities that go against there. So cybersecurity is number one above all the other buzzwords that are out there, right? All above AI, above cloud, above cost. All those other pieces are out there. Security is number one, that come off the list of anyone who's looking at technology to know where it's there. One of the things we do when I do the initial assessment is we do look and see if there's obvious security threats that they have in their tech stack as they list today. Most of the vendors do a pretty good job of preventing that today. In fact, most, if not all of them, do a good job of doing that today. But you still want to check and make sure there's nothing that, well, this, some of it's operational. If people are running around with USB sticks, I mean, that they're sticking in the computer, I mean, that's number one. That's someone's policy. Technology has nothing to do with that along the way, except that you have devices that don't have the ability to plug into, that are in that area. But you'll go to other than the cybersecurity, you'll go to areas where their computer room isn't locked. It's just sitting behind the front desk. And And I just scratch my head on some of those going, you know how vulnerable you are to have someone either come in and just take it away from you, or to be able to get into that system and get the information that's there. That's a physical thing. That's not a technology thing that goes along. So,
Absolutely.
and these aren't the brands. The brands do a good job of doing that. And the big hotel companies do. It's mostly independents that need a little bit of the help, because they usually don't have a technology person in their organization, because no one has that day job, right? So what I try to do is I go in and I say, okay, I'm your extension of your day job, right? I'm the guy this is my day job, but you don't need me there forever. You may need me there to stay on, just to be an advisor along the way. But the big stuff, you still got a day job that you have to do. And it's not your job to keep up on the latest technology trends or to understand the different things that are going on. So we're just supplementing what you're doing now, and can help you still do what you have going on in order to assess that. That's why most of my clients are like asset managers today, because they want me to go in and look at the properties, see what it's going to cost to get it up to modernization, and what's it going to cost them over the next 3 to 5 years to keep it that state. So, and that's all around the guest journey. That's all around looking at that and all those different pieces, and seeing how does that work? How does that support your operations to what you're doing today and what you're trying to accomplish? And I force them then to rethink sometimes, okay, are we just replacing what we're doing, or are we going to make it better? Are we going to challenge what we're doing there in order to make it modern, instead of just going and putting the same thing in that's going to do the same thing? Challenge to go out there and do something, sometimes to do something different, or do something that's easier to use, or more efficient to use, or can drive revenue, or help on labor, or do those things that can make it better, instead of just replacing what you have with something that's shiny and new.
Can you share any of those standouts, those systems, those solutions, the technology that you see as companies coming in and changing that status quo? What are some of your favorites? If you are allowed to say, if you feel comfortable saying that on air, of course.
I try to stay as agnostic as I can, especially in a public forum like this, to where I have, because
what about the most exciting areas that are being attacked, where people are thinking outside of the box within that journey? Where do you think the most innovation is happening?
A lot of it's around CRM and what they're doing with personalizing the guest experience. That's probably where you see a lot of that's going in. You're seeing some of the things with the vendors that are involved with IoT, where they're challenging what's going on, changing the whole guest room experience, from having static cable channels to being able to stream and download my favorite channel and watch it on the TV, so I feel like I'm at home. And again, personalization. I mean, that's where you see most of the innovation today, is around personalization. In there, you're seeing some things around the ones that are delving into AI, but AI is not a technology. AI is just it's not a feature. AI is a technology, is what I should say. People say, "Oh, we have AI. Who cares?" I mean, it's like saying we have Windows or we have iOS. I mean, AI is a technology which people have to leverage. So you're seeing things around there, which just makes people smarter and makes people work more efficiently. You're seeing things around, just some things are just taking manual processes and making it more automated, like through robotics and the things that you're going through there. Unfortunately, I've not seen a lot of innovation in the property management system outside of the mobile experience, which some embrace, and some are letting other vendors completely do that on their own. Restaurants, some of the point of sale vendors are getting more where their handhelds are prevalent, and for the servers, so they're more mobile, and they are paying at the table, or presenting electronically with what's going on there. You're seeing, you see the rise in what's going on over there, and then the ability just to some of the things around where you're seeing technology into places like poolside activities and that. So you're seeing some pickup in that, but a lot of that is still kind of, I don't know. It's not it doesn't wow you. I mean, they're just fixing a manual process that's been going on for a while. There's still some, I mean, a lot of folks still don't do single guest itinerary very well, because they got all these different systems where, hey, I just want to see on one spot what I've got going on while I'm staying at the resort, or along that. And that doesn't mean everybody. And I'll probably get emails after this from people who, hey, Greg, we do this. Come by and see me at High Tech next week. I'll show you how we do that. So I'm not saying nobody does it. I'm just saying you don't see a lot in there. A lot of it is still very legacy, very repeatable, or just or modern, or not modernizing, but just a newer version of what they've been doing for years, and not adding a lot of
features.
Yeah, ingenuity to it, or just challenge. It's still, you're replacing this. You're just replacing the status quo. I mean,
yeah, I love it. Well, this has been a very enlightening. I'm sorry.
The status quo. That's what
we do. We do, and it's super fun. I think it's a really cool time. Entering into travel hospitality, I'm pretty new at this, but it's definitely an industry that I'm enjoying, that I'm seeing, that I enjoy as an individual. And it's time. It's definitely time for technology to come and flip it on its head and make it even better. Because the older I get, I realize too that this is what life is about, right? Experience more than things. And I think travel, for me at least, is a huge part of that experience and just making life worth living. So let's make it as good as it can be. I love it. Greg, you already mentioned High Tech. You'll be there next week. Dojo Live, yours truly, will be there as well. So any of you watching, if you would like to meet up with me, go ahead and ping me via LinkedIn, Kimberly Lantis. But also, Greg, how might people get a hold of you if they'd like to continue the conversation or utilize your consultation service?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm there. I go to my website, which is pretty easy. It's gregghopkins.com, and you can reach out to me there. And I love talking to people and just exploring along with them, and seeing how we can help. Because, like I said, this is where we live, and that's why it's so important that consultants are used, because that's our role, is to stay up to date. I'm sure they run, and I'm sure they can all run their hotels better than I can. I just help them do it through technology.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. So stick around here just for a second as we go off air. But before we do, again, Dojo Live at High Tech next week. So there won't be any live shows, but keep up with us on social media, and then join us again on July 3rd. We're going to be having a Focusrite Europe recap with Alejandro Gomez of Hollybob. So that will be a fun one. And then the High Tech recap following on July 11th, and with some really great shows in between now and then as well. So take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day. Bye for now.